Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 124. As always, if you are enjoying the show, there's multiple ways you can support me. Share it with a friend, share the podcast, share the videos on Facebook, leave a comment or a like. You can support me financially by donating directly to me on paulataylorenergy.com under the podcast tab, or through the link in the notes on the podcast as well. So tonight we are going to be talking about energy as a fluid medium. And what the heck does that mean? We're going to get into that, but I'm going to take you into this journey with me as I experienced it, because I like to do that, and I think you'll get something out of these stories. I always hope that's why I share them. I know I did. So this last weekend I did my second craniosacral training, level 2, with Heidi Wilson at Fluid Healing here in Tucson. And last week I talked about navigating unexpected difficulties, and I mentioned that some circumstances in my life had prevented me from taking this trip to Mexico that I was really looking forward to kind of recharge and unwind. But it shifted things in my schedule in such a way that I had this availability for the class last weekend that I was not going to take because I was going to be out of town, and everything had sort of shifted. And so everything, my schedule kind of shifted back, and it was like, oh, look, I could take this space. And so that became kind of my substitute for this trip I was going to take to Mexico to recharge and unwind. And it sounds a little weird to say, oh, I'm going to go to a class and recharge and unwind. But the beautiful thing about bodywork education is that you receive bodywork as well as giving it. And so I got to receive some really amazing sessions, and it was such a beautiful group of women in this class who were just so heart-centered. It was such a safe space, such a beautiful space. We've been talking about this, how important safety is in allowing us to release those frequencies that are no longer serving us. And this was just such a beautiful example of this idea of holding space. So I talked about my first training in the episode on holding space. I highly recommend you go back and listen to it. You don't have to have listened to it to hear this one or watch this one, but it was just such an amazing experience. And there's some really powerful lessons in that, and we're going to build on some of the things we've been doing in this meditation tonight. We've been talking about being held. We've done 2 meditations now on being held, and this was such a beautiful example of, I'm trying not to get emotional, of people holding space for each other. It was just really amazing. So I'm going to take you through a little bit, like I did when I talked about my first class, of some of the experiences I had. I'm not going to go into a whole bunch of detail. I am in a couple places because it directly impacts tonight's topic. But I did want to give you a little bit of an update, because in that episode on holding space, I told the story about going to the children's garden where I met my babies that I had lost. I've had 12 miscarriages, and now I know I have 6 babies, or 6 children, because some of them tried to come to me multiple times, 6 spirits, and I got to meet them in the flesh, I almost said, but that would be absolutely figurative. I got to see what they would be like as people, as children. I got to interact with them as what it came to me that they kind of all showed up at the what would have been my favorite age for them. So they were ranging from about 2 or 3 to like 15. And so that happened in the very first session I had, and it was just so beautiful and so powerful. And one of the things that kind of bothered me about that children's garden experience was that I was told that no one's allowed in there, and they were going to make an exception for me. And I was like, well, what about everybody else? What about anyone else who's lost a child, whether it was, during pregnancy or after? Why am I the only one who gets to go here? And it was very clear to me that it's a very sacred space of kind of memorial and preservation, and that the children themselves, their souls are free. They go on to do what they're meant to do next. And that this is just It's kind of almost like a snapshot, a little, I was trying to describe it to my friend and I said, if you took the most joyful moment of your child's life, and then you took the most joyful moment of anybody who's ever lost a child, of all those children, and you put it in one place, that is what the children's garden feels like. And so it was kind of bothering me that, like, why am I the only person who ever got to go in there? And you can look in there, you can see it, but people aren't allowed to go in there. And so actually, this was in the very last session I had this weekend. There's a space I go to, and I've talked about it before. There's a healing space where I meet my guides, what I call the DFE beings. Now there's this beautiful window into the children's space, children's garden. And then if I look to the right, there's the Hall of Learning, and this is all the knowledge that's ever kind of existed for Earth, mostly, I think, specifically. Maybe for other places, I don't know for sure. And so when I looked to the left, like I knew there was something there, and I just couldn't see it yet. It kind of looked black to me. I was like, oh, I'm not ready to see this. And I had told one of my friends, oh, I think I'm going to see what's in that direction in this class this weekend. I just had this feeling, and it was so beautiful. It was the very last session. Such a beautiful way to wrap things up. And I just want to give you this. It's a little bit of an update about meeting your loved ones. And so in this session, I was in the healing space where I enter, and I could see the children's garden, and all of a sudden I was like, oh, if I look to the left, I'm gonna see what's over there. And I had a little bit of trepidation about it. Like it felt very big, not scary necessarily, just like it was like there was something really big coming in. And so I turned and I started to walk, obviously in this vision or in my imagination, in this spiritual realm. And craniosacral is so good at holding the space for that. The people I've been working with since I did my class, the people I've done some craniosacral with, the clients I have, pretty much every one of them has had some sort of a vision, which is awesome. I love that so much. And I don't like to expect that, but it's just happened to me so many times in these sessions that now I wait to see what's going to happen. So I started walking down, and I realized I was in this beautiful, like a geodesic, is that the word? Dome, like an atrium. And if you've ever been in an indoor botanical garden, that's kind of what it was like. Like everything, it was all windows, and it was kind of almost like dome shaped. And there were beautiful plants everywhere and beautiful flowers everywhere, and there were birds flying around. It was an aviary. There were butterflies flying around. I could see lizards kind of running around on the ground, and I was like, oh, this is really beautiful. But it was very clear to me that it was like a sort of a preparation area for something I was walking towards. So I was walking through there, and I'm kind of looking around, and I got to the end of it, to the door, and I looked outside. And it was the same beautiful green grass that I saw in the children's garden. And there was a hill, and down at the bottom of the hill, there was this big lake. And in front of the lake, there were all these families basically having picnics. And it came to me right away that this is the place where people meet with their loved ones after they pass on. They reunite with their loved ones. And so I looked at it for a minute because it was just really amazing and beautiful. And then I went out the door and I walked down the hill. And as soon as I got next to the lake, I saw this long picnic table, and I saw all of these relatives on, all sides of my family who have passed away. And some of them I see. I've seen them since they died because I do communicate and interact with some of them. But some of them were family members maybe I didn't know as well, or I didn't interact with as much, or whatever, and they were all there, and my Aunt Paula was there, who I was named for, and she was my very first Reiki guide, my Reiki emissary, I call her now, because I realized my guides were always the DFE beings, but they were sending these emissaries that were familiar to me, that were comforting, and she was kind of like my grandmother figure in my life, and I haven't seen her in a long time, because she kind of went off and in the realm and is doing whatever she's doing now. And so the first thing I did was make a joke, because we used to joke all the time. She would try to have a picnic and it would rain, like every year on Memorial Day or Labor Day, every year. And so I was like, look, it doesn't rain here. You can have as many picnics as you want. And it was just such a really joyful, beautiful place. And I asked, what is this called? Because I was like, is this heaven? Like, what is this place? And the right away came to me, it's called Reunion Park. So you might not be able to go into the children's garden, but you can go to Reunion Park and you can meet your loved ones, anyone you've lost. And I invited my mentors. I have a couple mentors. My elementary school teacher, Dr. Catherine Hardig, she came and said hello to me. And my mentor, Sherry Ford, who I mentioned a lot on the show. And we had a little powwow, my Aunt Paula and Sherry and Dr. Hardig, and we kind of went off by ourselves and just had this really beautiful kind of sacred women's circle. And it was just a wonderful, joyful, beautiful, heart-filling experience. So I just wanted to share that because it's been bothering me a little bit that I was like, well, if you can't go to the children's garden, like, what's the point? And that joy, that same feeling of joy is in this Reunion Park. And it feels very clear to me that when we pass on, we have access to that place. For whatever reason, I have a connection to it from here, just like, some people have connections, and you can probably develop it too. I'm not unique, I don't think. But anyway, I wanted to share that story because it was just really joyful and a beautiful way to end. There was a lot of emotional release this weekend, and so it was just a really beautiful, joyful way to end the weekend. But let's talk about the experiences I had that led me into this topic of thinking about energy as a fluid medium. So I'm not going to go through individually each session, that would take too long, but essentially there was this kind of running theme through this weekend of me really feeling this fluid body that Heidi talks about much more physically. I was feeling it in the first class, but in this class, like in one of I said I went on a cosmic trip. That's kind of what it felt like. In one of the sessions I've known for a long time I had some energetic holding in my shoulders and in my jaw, and we were doing jaw work and neck work and some limb work, arms and legs. And so I was in this session I was receiving, and it became clear to me that there were some energetic dams in my shoulders. And I'm just going to block this person. Okay, somebody keeps leaving creepy comments, and so I was going to block them, sorry. So it was very clear to me that there were these energetic dams in my shoulders, and I could see them actually as like gates, almost like gates. And that if I could just raise the gates up, then this beautiful fluid would flow back out through my shoulders and through my neck and through my jaw. And so I did have this beautiful kind of flow and this release, and it continued over a few different sessions. But in that very first one, I could feel the flow of this fluid. We're going to talk a little bit more about what I'm talking about, but I want to just tell you about the experience. And I could feel it first kind of flowing through my shoulders, out my body. And then I could feel it beyond my body. And I could feel my family members, and I had this beautiful sense of this idea of surrender that we talk about so much, that I was fully embodying in that moment. And this idea was that if I just let this fluid out, if I just let it flow, it will take care of everything in my life for me. The worry I have about the future, the fluid just flowed out there and was like, I got it, don't worry. The things that are going on in the present that I'm a little bit worried about, the fluid's got it, it's just flowing out. And it was just this beautiful feeling of expansion and this flow of fluid that just kept going and going and going and going, to the point where it was like, what am I so worried about in my life? And then I started to see that this fluid is how we affect this, what I sometimes call dense reality, this quote unquote solid reality. And we're going to get more into that. So then in the next session I had a really big emotional release. I had a bunch of kind of release from my shoulders, and I started hearing this voice over and over again. And it was saying, the fluid is the medium. just over and over again through the whole session, almost annoyingly. The fluid is the medium. The fluid is the medium. The fluid is the medium. Over and over again. I just heard this. The fluid, there was like a rhythm to it. The fluid is the medium. The fluid is the medium. And in the meantime, you know, I was crying, and like, you know, it was in a good way. I was releasing pain. I was releasing trauma. I was crying. We talk about that a lot. That is a physical release of emotional energy. And then I was also feeling this freedom of like being able to move my shoulders, and this freedom of being true to who I was, and claiming my authenticity, and not worrying about what people think about me, and whether I fit into this box that I was trying to fit into in this time in my life when I was trying to figure out who I was. And it was related to playing the oboe, which is funny because there's a lot of tension in the front of my shoulders physically from holding the oboe out in front of me. It looks like a clarinet if you're not familiar. And it's a very static thing. And what came to me emotionally was that I was also holding on to a lot of the insecurities and this idea that I knew it wasn't the right thing for me to do, but the thing I wanted to do was not a thing that people... Vocal toning, intuitive vocal toning. This was like 1996. I mean, there were probably people doing it, I'm sure, but I was not aware of that at the time. I was so out of touch. I was so closed down. I had all this armoring. So I was releasing that. And then I just kept hearing the fluid is the medium. The fluid is the medium over and over again. And then at the very end of the session, such a beautiful session. The woman who worked on me, at the end of the session, she said, is there somewhere on your body I can hold that you'll feel supported? I think is something like what she said. It was very appropriate body worker terminology. But the way I received it, what I heard her say is, how would you like to be held? And we've been working on that, right? We've done 2 meditations about being held. How would you like to be held? With love and safety. And absolutely, I directed one of her hands to my shoulder, and the other one we were to my hand, and then we just sat there for maybe like 5 minutes, and it was such a powerful experience of being loved and held and supported, and I'm so grateful to her for holding that space. And as things were kind of shifting, what I heard was the fluid is the medium and the light is love. The fluid is the medium and the light is love. The fluid is the medium and the light is love. And when I met up with my mentors in Reunion Park, we went out onto the lake and we were kind of floating on this. It was like a living island, but it was floating. It wasn't anchored. And we were holding hands, and we were chanting, the fluid is the medium and the light is love. The fluid is the medium and the light is love, just over and over and over again. And I was just going with it. I wasn't thinking. I wasn't in a mental space. And so let's talk about what that really means, because the implications of all of these kind of journeys I took were really monumental. And I want to share that with you. And I want to take you through this kind of mental process of understanding, like, what the heck does this mean? So the first thing that came to me over the course of these sessions is this idea that we call in light every week in our meditation. The light is love. I say that all the time, maybe not exactly like that. The light is unconditional love. The light is love. Got that right away. I call in Reiki. I call in energy. The light is love. But this, like, the fluid is the medium, I was like, what does that mean? And so what came to me especially in that big cosmic trip I had where I was just really expanding and expanding and expanding, what came to me is that energy is fluid. And I'm going to explain what I mean by that, because I am an energy worker. We talk about energy pretty much every week on this show. And what I saw was that in this physical reality, this fluid energy is how we affect our physical reality. And because everything in our reality is vibration. Everything is vibration. This physical Tibetan bowl in front of me, ooh, you can hear it ringing as I speak next to it. Looks physical. It looks solid. If I hit it, it's going to make a noise like I hit a solid object, but this is particles vibrating. Light is waves moving in a horizontal direction. We're going to talk more about that. Sound is waves moving in a vertical direction, up and down, up and down. Everything is vibration. And so this fluid movement is how we actually affect the physical world around us. And some of the information that came through to me that I thought was really cool was that the earth is one of the only places where the light and the fluid can exist simultaneously within a physical body. We can have the experience of this fluidity, this movement of energy, and this light, because we are light beings. But when we're in this body on the physical plane, the fluid is the medium that transmits, that carries the light, which is love. And so let's talk a little bit about what I mean by like energy is fluid. What do I mean by fluid? Because you might be thinking about, you're thinking back to science and you're like, okay, there's a solid and there's a fluid and there's a gas. What I'm talking about is the way that it behaves, the way that it moves. So energy is vibration. Everything is vibration. And the best way to think about this, I think, is this idea of waves. And so light travels in waves, these horizontal waves, they go back and forth. And the easiest way to think about that in physical terms is to think about the ocean. So the ocean travels in waves, right? But there's multiple layers of movement going on. So you've got the waves on the surface. You're sitting next to the ocean and you hear the waves and they're hitting the shore and it's very rhythmic. There's a reason we love the ocean. I talk all the time about how much I love the ocean. So there's these waves of motion, and that exists energetically. The energy moves in this fluid pattern. So you've got these waves of motion, right? And then underneath those waves, if you're standing on a beach, is this longer movement, this movement of kind of back and forth, that sometimes, if you've ever been at a beach and you know about a riptide, so a riptide is something that moves horizontally. So the waves are coming in toward you if you're standing on the shore, right? But horizontally is how a riptide moves. If it's strong enough, it'll pull horizontally. So there's this kind of mid-tide that's moving horizontally out and back underneath the waves that are coming towards you as you're standing on the shore. But then also the tide is going in and out. And if you've ever, Rocky Point is a great place to see that. The Sea of Cortez has one of the highest movements of tide, the biggest movements of tide in the world. So you'll stand there and the tide goes back hundreds and hundreds of feet. And you see all these rocks and you see sand, and then it comes all the way back in. So that's the long tide. You've got this long tide that's moving all the way out and it's coming all the way back in. And depending on where you are, like in Rocky Point, it's every 12 hours. That's actually fairly fast. So you've got the waves hitting the shore. You've got this movement of energy kind of especially in the physical body to tap into. Then you've got this mid-tide, this kind of flow out to the horizon and back, or maybe within the body. I'm using the word mid-tide, and that actually has a meaning in craniosacral. I'm not sure if I'm using that correctly for craniosacral. This is just how I experience it. There's this longer kind of breath-like movement out kind of into your aura and back. And then there's this long tide that goes all the way out to the horizon, as Heidi explains, and that takes about a minute each direction to come back. And when you think about energy in these terms, because we talk about energy all the time, and we talk about flow all the time, but something about this way of thinking has solidified this idea in my mind that I'm always talking about releasing frequencies that no longer serve us. So I said I had these dams up in my shoulders, and it was stopping the flow of that water. We're going to just go with water. That's the other thing. It's a fluid movement. It's viscous. I think it's more like honey. It's kind of the way this flows, but water works too. It's still a fluid. So the water's hitting the dam, right? And what does that do? That builds more and more and more pressure. And sometimes dams break, right? in this case, I chose to raise this gate. That was my visualization. And oh yeah, the water flows out. And all of a sudden it has more space to move in. And my arms physically actually got sore after this. And there was, it was very gentle. There was no digging in of muscles. This was all from this movement of this energy being released that had been dammed up for so long. And that is from trauma. That is this trauma of me feeling like I didn't belong, and I couldn't articulate who I really was and what I was meant to do, and I couldn't make people understand it, and I felt like I had to be a certain way. I had to be small, and I had to be quiet, and I had to be good, and I had to be perfect. All of that stuff, that trauma got held in my shoulders, and it was damming the energetic flow. It was keeping the flow from flowing. It was causing this sort of stagnation of flow. And when I raised the dam, that water flowed back out. And frequency-wise, I released those frequencies of trauma. And I cried. I had to release it from the body. We talk about that all the time. And crying is a great physical release of emotional energy. And so the fluid, that fluid energy, is the medium through which we allow our light to flow, because we are made of light. We are divine beings of light. But along the way, in this life and past lives, we start to dam up that flow because we're scared. We're trying to protect ourselves. We're trying to armor ourselves. We're trying to help ourselves. And in fact, we actually make things worse, because when we have flow, the light is moving through us, and then we have even more protection without even really trying, because it's in that flow. So the fluid is the medium, and the light is love. The fluid energy is the medium through which that light of love moves into our bodies, through our bodies, out of our bodies, around our bodies. And what came to me in that beautiful cosmic trip I had was this idea that if I just get out of the way, if I just surrender and I let the flow happen, and if you're watching the video, you can see me kind of swaying back and forth. I'm feeling that flow. Everything will work itself out. I don't have to try so hard. I don't have to try to control things. I don't have to hold things tightly, because that dams up the flow of energy. It actually stops the flow of energy. And if I can let go and let flow, then that energy starts to flow, because the fluid energy is the medium through which the light of love flows. And I just think it's so beautiful, and it makes me feel like a different person. After I had that release, and my beautiful partner was holding my hand on my shoulder and letting me cry it out and come back to myself. And I rolled over and I looked at her and I just said, thank you. And she said it was my privilege. And I felt that. It is a privilege to hold space for each other. It is a privilege to have that heart-centered connection, to create a space of safety. It is a privilege to hold the space so that somebody can re-access their flow, so that that light flows through them in that fluid medium, in that energetic movement. Such a beautiful experience, just amazing. And I said to her, I'm afraid to sit up because I'm not the same person I was, and I think everything will look different. That is how profound this work is, and I've been doing it for 20 plus years, and I am continually amazed by the power of this work, by the shift, by the change. And I'm a little bit speechless, because that never happens. It does happen sometimes. It happens more and more. because the fluid is the medium and the light is love. And as that fluid medium begins to move more and more freely, you have more direct experience of that light, of that love. We're not running away from it anymore. We're embodying it. I can feel it all the way down into my belly and down through my legs and feet. And it's just such a delicious experience. So in tonight's meditation, we're going to experiment around a little bit with feeling that fluid. And we did that in the holding space episode a little bit. And the way I'd like to do it tonight is that almost every week we call in this light, and we start kind of from the top of the head and we work our way down the body to the feet. So tonight we're going to call in that light, but we're going to call it in as that fluid medium. And a few people have said this to me recently, so I'm going to make a little comment about this here. Just made a TikTok about this, but I've had a couple people recently say to me, I have a hard time with meditation because of the visualization. I can't see anything. And I didn't see anything for years, probably for a long time. I don't see anything in my third eye. Sometimes I see color. This is an imagination process. And if you are not a visual person, which I was not for years now, I would say I am, because I've trained myself to be. I'm a verbal person. That is why I use so many words. But that is why I try to be very descriptive. I had someone the other day who was experiencing, she said, I don't see this, but I can feel it. I can smell it. I can hear it. I can feel my feet on the ground. So use all of your senses. Just use intention. Let the words of my description bring something to mind. So if I say to you, let this flow in like honey, you may not see yourself squeezing the little bear with the honey in it and the honey coming out really slowly. But as I describe that to you, you've probably had that experience. You can remember what it's like. You don't have to feel it. The intention is to just bring that awareness of like, this is a slow flow. This is a thick viscosity. This is this beautiful, warm amber honey or syrup, and it's flowing down through my head. It's flowing into my chest and my back. It's flowing down into my belly. So this is about the intention and the imagination and just practicing. It takes practice. But if you don't see anything, that's okay. It doesn't mean it's not going to work for you. Let go of that judgment and just let the energy flow. Sometimes some people sense energy directly. I can feel energy directly. So I like to use visualization because it's fun, but it also helps people who don't have a direct sense of that energy. And eventually you start to. Again, that's practice. So practice makes progress. So don't get frustrated with yourself if you're not connecting to the visualizations. They're just another tool. Just like the breath, it's just a tool. All of these are tools to bring you into this beautiful flow so that you can start letting that fluid medium, that energy fluid flow, so that you can see that effect in the physical world. Because I say very often it feels dense to me. And when I'm in the flow state, it feels less dense. It feels more like a dance. And when I talk to Heidi, my teacher, when you watch her even her gestures, she also teaches Tai Chi, and it's very much like watching somebody moving Qigong, Tai Chi, those kind of exercises. If you've ever seen that, just she's moving through that beautiful, viscous, kind of thick, fluid energy all the time, and it's beautiful to watch. It's beautiful to experience. And so we're gonna bring that into the body, bring that light through our fluid energy into the body, and then we're just gonna play around again, kind of feeling these tides. And again, there's no pressure here. There's no judgment here. If you feel nothing, you feel nothing. That's fine. But maybe as you take a breath in and you take a breath out, you notice that the out breath, oh, there's a little bit extra there. There's a little bit of movement there. Maybe your body feels like it wants to sway back and forth or forward and back. We're just going to play with that. And we may use our arms a little bit because sometimes that can kind of help feel that sensation. And I think that's all I need to say about that. So let's meditate together. For this meditation, I do recommend that you sit up if possible to give you some access to this feeling of movement. You might actually want to physically move your body a little bit as we're doing this. If that's not accessible to you or it doesn't feel good, that's fine. You can lie down. But if it's comfortable and you're seated, just make sure that you're in a nice comfy position, that you're supported. Let your feet be on the ground or your bottom be on the ground. Maybe raise your hips up if you're sitting on the ground. If you're sitting up in a chair, you might want to find something to support your back if that feels good. Just getting as comfortable as possible here. Maybe moving the head and neck a little bit, shrugging the shoulders once or twice. Just reminding yourself that you are in a body. You may have been in the mental space all day or evening. So just doing a little bit of gentle movement, coming back to the physical body. And then as we call our beautiful unconditional light and love in, we're going to use this intention, this idea, this visualization, if that works for you, of this beautiful fluid energy flowing down the body. You can imagine honey or warm syrup, something with a little bit of a thick, golden, beautiful consistency, and just imagine it flowing in through the top of your head, letting it come into that head space, into the jaw, flowing down through the neck and the throat, feeling that thick, warm, beautiful fluid flowing out into the shoulders and down the upper arms, letting it come into the elbows and the forearms, out into the wrists and hands. You might even imagine this beautiful, thick amber liquid dripping out of your fingertips. It's flowing so freely down your arms that there's a little bit of it dripping out through your fingertips. Let it flow down, beautifully coating that chest and upper back. You can imagine that this beautiful warm amber liquid, this honey, this syrup, is coating that heart space with this beautiful unconditional love and light, letting it flow down into the belly, into the back, mid-back, low back, down into the low belly and the hips and the pelvis. Imagine this beautiful liquid, fluid light flowing down into your thighs. You might even bring your hands down your thighs slowly and even feel as though you're moving through this honey or this syrup down your thighs toward your knees, letting it flow down from your knees into the lower legs, just pouring down this beautiful fluid down the calves, down the lower legs, through the ankles and feet. And again, this flow is so powerful that it's actually flowing all the way out from your feet. You're just dripping this beautiful golden fluid, this liquid, down into the earth. And then just feeling that flow continue, flowing all the way down through the head and the neck, down through the torso and the hips, through the legs, all the way down to the feet. Feel it flow down the arms and out the fingertips. And again, just checking in with this beautiful flow. It's flowing down you in waves now, all the way down from the head, through the face and the neck and the shoulders, out through the arms, down through the torso and the legs, out the feet. Flowing down the body, this beautiful light, this unconditional love, this flow. And if you find any resistance anywhere, if there's an area of the body where this feels like it's not flowing, give a little attention there. Maybe take a couple breaths, maybe add that oxytocin ha sound. Telling the body that it's safe to allow this beautiful flow of fluid energy through all parts of the body. Give a little extra attention to the belly here. Most of us are a little disconnected from the belly. You might even rub your hands in circles gently on your belly, just feeling that liquid coming into the belly, into the low back and the hips. And if you don't feel that liquid quality, if you don't feel that flow, that's completely fine. Just keep setting the intention that it's flowing down the body. And then you might notice that your body feels a little bit more fluid. You might explore a little bit of movement here, just gently in your seat if you're seated. Maybe you move your torso around a little bit, or you circle your hips a little bit. Maybe you circle your wrists a little bit, and you'll just notice there's this beautiful flow. And you're just letting yourself flow intuitively. There's no rush here. There's no rules. And if this doesn't feel good, that's fine. You can just keep exploring that flow down through the head, through the chest and the torso and the hips, down through the legs. But if it's feeling good, just exploring this flow now, like a little bit further away from the body. Maybe stretching your arms out a little bit and just feeling the flow. It's like you're moving through this beautiful honey, this golden, thick, beautiful fluid. Maybe just for a minute or less here, just exploring this flow physically with your body. And then as you're ready, come still and feel the flow even in the stillness. Feel that flow down the body and out the feet. Feel this flow out to the sides, past your body. You might even start to explore the feeling of this flow all the way out to the edge of the room, sending that beautiful fluid, that honey, that syrup out into the four corners of the space that you're sitting in. And if your body wants to move here, you let that movement continue, but you don't need to. You can let go of the movement. But it might feel good as you explore this fluid motion to move a little bit. And then notice the areas of tension in your body again. And notice if you can bring just a little bit of gentle fluid motion to that tension. Very gentle, not stretching here, not moving to your full capacity. You might even feel like this liquid fluid flow has taken over and it's moving your body for you. It's moving your breath for you. It's moving those areas of stagnation, of holding, of tightness in the body. And if you have the sense that something's ready to be opened or released, you can use this visualization of this idea that you've created a dam and you're destroying the dam, or you're raising a little gate up and this fluid just flows out through that area of tension, all the way out through the body and then out of the body. Let this fluid flow all the way out of your body, out of the hands, out of the feet. If you're focused on your legs, let that fluid flow from the hips down through the legs, all the way out the feet. There's no need to hold this fluid. It is infinite. This fluid is transmitting that unconditional love. It cannot be limited. So don't worry about holding the fluid. Don't worry about needing to hang on to it. Let it go. There's so much more where that came from. And the more you let that fluid go, the more you get out of its way, the more that intelligence takes over and that energy flows on its own. That fluid flows on its own. Give yourself a few moments here to experience that in whatever way is calling to you. You can keep exploring that flow down the body. You can explore the flow within the body. You can explore this flow outside of your body. Just let that continue for the next few moments here. Ooh, ay, 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 ay. Say, ay, 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 ay. Ooh, ay, 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 oh, ay, 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 ay. Ooh, ay, 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 oh, ay, 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 oh. Ooh, yeah, yeah, oh, yeah. Way, oh, yeah. Way, oh, yeah. The fluid is the medium and the light is love. The fluid is the medium and the light is love. Energy is the fluid medium through which the light of love can travel. Energy is the fluid medium through which that light of love will travel. Allow it to travel now. Allow it to flow. Let it fill your body. Let it fill the space around your body. Let it fill the space you're in. Let it flow all the way out to the horizon if you'd like, if that feels good, if it feels accessible. And let go of any judgments about how well you're doing with this. You can come back to this practice as many times as you'd like to develop this skill of feeling this flow of energy, of tapping into this fluid medium through which that light of unconditional love travels within this physical realm, in your body, in your heart space, in the world around you, sending it out to the people you love now, sending it out to the world as at large, letting this fluid flow limitlessly all the way out to the edge of your capacity, sharing it, knowing that it will always be replenished if we let go of that resistance to the flow. As we let that flow happen, we are always replenished with new, beautiful, fluid energy, with beautiful light, with beautiful love. As you're ready, you can take a few more deep breaths here. Just coming back to yourself now, bringing that beautiful feeling of fluid motion with you as much as you'd like. I encourage you to come back to this practice and notice that you can open more and more to that flow, to that fluid energy, flowing freely through your body, through your energetic fields, through the world around you. Sat Nam. The truth of your identity is that you are that light, and you transmit that light through this fluid medium, through this energetic flow within yourself, out into the world around you, spreading that beautiful light everywhere you go, claiming it as your birthright, letting yourself feel that light in all corners of your physical, emotional, and energetic bodies, that beautiful fluid energy carrying that light to all the corners of your being, to all the corners of the world around you. take one last nice big deep breath. If you'd like, you can let it out with that audible ha sound or a nice big sigh. Bring this fluid motion with you into the rest of your day or evening. Bring this light into the world to your capacity in all moments of your life. As you're ready, you can move hands and fingers, feet, ankles, torso, whatever feels good, just to come fully back into your body. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Have a fluid rest of your week. Let that light flow through you. And notice the change in yourself and the change in the world around you. I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.